Are you looking live at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, where President Obama and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe are about to speak together? It's a historic occasion. It comes 75 years after the U.S. base was attacked by the Japanese, the attack that drew the world into World War II.
I stand here at Pearl Harbor as the Prime Minister of Japan. If we listen closely, we can make out the sound of restless waves breaking and then retreating again. The calm inlet of brilliant blue is radiant with the gentle sparkle of the warm sun. Behind me, a striking white form atop the azure is the USS Arizona Memorial. Together with President Obama, I paid a visit to that memorial, the resting place for many souls. It was a place which brought utter silence to me. Inscribed there are the names of the servicemen who lost their lives. Sailors and Marines hailing from California and New York, Michigan and Texas, and various other places, serving to uphold their noble duty of protecting the homeland they loved, lost their lives. Amidst searing flames that day when aerial bombing tore the USS Arizona in two. Even 75 years later, the USS Arizona, now at rest atop the seabed, is the final resting place for a tremendous number of sailors and Marines. Listening again as I focus my senses, alongside the song of the breeze and the rumble of the rolling waves, I can almost discern the voices of those crewmen. Voices of lively conversations, upbeat and at ease on that day, on a Sunday morning. Voices of young servicemen talking to each other about their futures and dreams. Voices calling out the names of loved ones in their very final moments. Voices praying for the happiness of children still unborn. Each and every one of those servicemen had a mother and a father anxious about his safety. Many had wives and girlfriends they loved, and many must have had children they would have loved to watch grow up. All of that was brought to an end. When I contemplate that solemn reality, I am rendered entirely speechless. Rest in peace, precious souls of the fallen. With that overwhelming sentiment, I cast flowers on behalf of Japanese people upon the waters where those sailors and Marines sleep. President Obama, the people of the United States of America, and the people around the world, as the Prime Minister of Japan, I offer my sincere and everlasting condolences to the souls of those who lost their lives here, as well as to the spirits of all the brave men and women whose lives were taken by a war that commenced in this very place, and also to the souls of the countless innocent people who became victims of the war.
All right. We are monitoring this news conference as well as we're monitoring an evacuation at Trump Tower. We don't have details. We have a reporter on his way to the scene. NYPD tells us that the Trump Tower is being evacuated for some reason. We're going to also monitor the event in Hawaii. When President Obama takes the microphone, we will go back to him. But in the meantime, back here right now, some very sad news to report tonight. In case you're just tuning in, actress Carrie Fisher passed away today after suffering a massive heart attack on a flight from London to L.A. on Friday. She's best known for her legendary role in Star Wars as Princess Leia.
We've entered the Alderaan system.
Governor Tarkin, I should have expected to find you holding Vader's leash. I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
All right, Fisher was 60 years old now. Kennedy, an icon. They call her Hollywood royalty.
Yeah, just 19 when she was cast in that role as Princess Leia. And she said she had no idea exactly how her life was going to change, but she knew it was going to change utterly. And this as the daughter of two 50s legends. Her dad, of course, singer Eddie Fisher, her mom, Debbie Reynolds. And as Julie points out, she was the Jennifer Aniston to their Brangelina. I mean, this was the ultimate love triangle between Debbie Reynolds, Eddie Fisher, and Elizabeth Taylor. And Carrie Fisher is the product of that union. She had one daughter, 24-year-old Billie Lourd, with super agent Brian Lourd, and they had a serious relationship for many years. And not only leaves her imprint for many as the iconic Princess Leia, but also as an incredible writer of memoirs, fiction books, and a screenwriter.
And Melissa, she had some problems, some well-documented problems over the years with, I believe, drug and alcohol abuse.
And she also had bipolar disorder, and she was a very strong advocate on the side of being open about the fact if you had challenges with mental health and finding help. She was open about her own struggles over time. I mean, she wrote Postcards from the Edge, one of my favorite books, a great movie about her life and about her struggles along the way. And I think for a lot of people, she was an iconic person with a lot of flaws who sort of wore those and even celebrated them at times, was very funny about it. What I love about her, too, is a lot of people don't know that she was a very talented script doctor, which means that when they were making a movie and it wasn't coming out very well, or they weren't happy with the script and they had already invested so much money and they had so many actors on the hook and they had the director and everything, they would call her in to punch it up and make it funnier, make it better. Like, she had that kind of talent where it had nothing to do with her name or her comedy or her voice. It had to do with her just coming in and being so talented that she can make a product better. I have so much respect for that.
Okay, guys, I want to just alert the audience. There is now an all clear at Trump Tower. We're going to still send the reporter over to Trump Tower. We'll get back with whatever the latest news is, but they are calling it an all clear right now.
Yeah, I know it's kind of interesting. They did say that there was some type of suspicious package, according to another network, that they were reporting. That was the reason why it was evacuated. And now it's starting to reveal they did have an evacuation plan for Trump Tower. It has been a concern. There is a way to get, if Donald Trump had been there, get him out quickly. So there are a lot of challenges to being in New York City and being the president-elect of the United States. Okay. That's one of them.
Let's do this now. Carrie Fisher, also the Star Wars brand, massive. Where do they go from here?
Well, I think they got a lot of places to go from here. If you saw what just happened over the weekend, and the way this, and the way the latest the latest edition of the Star Wars brand continues to surge. I would say this about Carrie Fisher: it's amazing the misreporting that took place. Evidently, the reports are now she never regained consciousness from that plane. When the word was yesterday, oh, she seems to be coming out of it and doing okay. It's amazing how different it was as we get the news of her tragic passing at the age of 60 years old now. How wrong it was over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, it's interesting is we're all Generation X, I think all of us here, and all of us are sitting here thinking about Carrie Fisher and what she meant to all of us, not just in Star Wars, but George Michael also passed away over the weekend.
At 53.
At 53. And to me, and I think so many people watching today, this is such a personal loss in ways that I think older celebrities aren't, because first of all, she was only 60, George Michael was 53. And these are people that at least I, and I think all of us, grew up with. These are people that we felt were almost our own. I almost feel like somebody that I know died. I've never met her. I've never met George Michael. But to me, this was a loss that I felt as somebody who'd grown up with them, as somebody who'd watched them. I mean, Star Wars came out in 1977. And for generations, not just for me, but for our kids.
Well, yeah, but that's a really good point. And I know, Melissa, you can attest to this. My daughters are huge Star Wars fans and really moved by The Force Awakens, which is, of course, Episode 7 in the series. Episode 8 had already wrapped this year, and Carrie Fisher was a part of that film. So, we will see that role continue, which is great news. But, back to George Michael, I did have a chance to meet and talk to George Michael.
Lucky.
An incredible conversationalist who is so curious, not only about various musical acts, and I watched an amazing show where Morrissey and George Michael and a British DJ held court for a half an hour in 1984 talking about music of the day.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to play a little bit of this. Take a listen. We cut a little bit. I think this is the soundbite we have of George Michael and Elton John. That's what we were talking about. What an iconic hero. I just grew up listening to George Michael.
And he kept saying over and over again he couldn't destroy his own career. For a while he really resented his fame, and he says, I don't know what it is about my career, no matter what I do, it's like the duck in the bathtub, it keeps popping straight up again. A lot of people would love to have that problem, but evidently he did wrestle with his fame almost his entire life.
Almost became a recluse or a semi-recluse recently. And also this, Daily Mail is reporting allegedly that he had a real problem with his weight. He gained weight over the last year or so, and this was bothering him immensely.
I mean, it's interesting, especially when you look at the two of them collectively, that the artistry comes with so much baggage. It's so hard, and maybe there's a connection between that. But he was such a terrific artist, and even you hear there just his voice. I mean, you talk about why he couldn't stop being famous. Part of it was when he picked up a microphone, he just had that beautiful sound.
Right. But he was also discounted as an artist because Wham was considered a boy band. Two things here. One, you talk about his weight gain and his reclusiveness. The British press is absolutely brutal, and they are relentless. And they were publishing photos of him where, some accounts were that he was pushing 300 pounds, and he had to go out and face that decade after decade. But the thing is, and I was re-listening to a lot of his stuff this week, and particularly his two solo records, Faith and Listen Without Prejudice Volume 1, and I was listening to these ballads, and you listen to Father Figure, which was supposed to be a dance track, and they ended up just layering the vocals, and it's so beautiful. And as I was listening to not only the words, he produced it, he wrote the lyrics, he wrote the music, and he sang it so emotionally. I was listening to that going, Adele was so deeply influenced by George Michael, and you can hear it, and you almost listen to some of these contemporary singers, and you think it would be impossible for them to have these multi-layered emotional voices and careers without people like George Michael.
Think about why he must have been conflicted. I mean, he grew up really almost from childhood as a boy band member, as you said, with Andrew Ridgeley and Wham, and then obviously came out with Faith, where we remember in Listen Without Prejudice Volume 1 where he burnt the jacket, the Faith.
Yeah, that's
Faith
in
jacket.
Freedom 90.
Freedom 90,
Freedom
which
90
the big
video.
debate, what's better, Freedom by Wham or Freedom 90, solo George Michael, big debate, let me know. But I will also say, I think for him, he also was coming to terms with the fact that he was gay at a time when AIDS was a huge scourge, and I think became a recluse in part because of the fact that he'd been this boy band guy that little girls were in love with, and he had to wrestle with the fact that could have all been blown up if people had found out the fact that he was actually gay.
So, producers, do this. I really want to get this in. This is a fantastic Carpool Karaoke, the very first one, so popular right now. If you have that, take a look. Listen, George Michael, the first guy, Carpool Karaoke.
Why can't I come to Comic Relief?
Because you're a joke, George. It's embarrassing. I can't walk into Comic Relief with you. Comic Relief's about helping people like you.
Or just listen to some music.
Baby, I'm
Michael's music will live on forever. An amazing man, an amazing artist, an amazing talent. He will never be forgotten. Neither will Carrie Fisher. We'll be right back.
ご来席の皆さん、我が国の兵士の皆さん、そして特に真珠湾攻撃の成功者。
All right, very good. We have some audio issues. If you are fluent in Japanese, then you can understand exactly what President Obama was saying as he and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe speak together at the USS Arizona Memorial in Hawaii. They are there at the Pearl Harbor Memorial. The President obviously speaking right now. As soon as we resolve that audio issue, we will bring it to you. Now, before the election, President Obama and President-elect Trump couldn't find many nice words to say about one another.
He doesn't have the temperament, he doesn't have the knowledge, he doesn't seem to have the interest in acquiring the knowledge or the basic honesty that a president needs to have.
We're going to have big problems. If you think Orlando was the end of it with this weak attitude and this pathetic president that we have, it wasn't, folks. It wasn't.
You don't see him hanging out with working people unless they're cleaning his room. Or mowing the fairways on his golf club.
He has been a disaster as a president. He will go down as one of the worst presidents in the history of our country.
Well, they seemed to have mended fences until 44, threw a little bit of shade at 45 over the weekend. In an interview, Mr. Obama said he would have defeated Mr. Trump if he were able to run for a third term.
I am confident in this vision because I'm confident that if I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it.
Rally around the family with a pocket full of shells. The president-elect, of course, wasn't going to let that one slide, so he tweeted, President Obama said he thinks he would have won against me. He should say that. But I say no way. Jobs leaving, ISIS, O'Care, etc. The world was gloomy before I won. There was no hope. Now the market is up nearly 10% and Christmas spending is over $1 trillion. Well, we're going to pick up with that in just a bit. Right now, let's go to President Obama and Prime Minister Abe in Hawaii.
Carried his commander to safety and then fired an anti-aircraft gun until he ran out of ammo. We honor Americans like Jim Downing, a gunner's mate, first class of the West Virginia. Before he raced to the harbor, his new bride pressed into his hand a verse of Scripture. The eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. As Jim fought to save his ship, he simultaneously gathered the names of the fallen so that he could give closure to their families. He said, it was just something you do. We remember Americans like Harry Payne, a fireman from Honolulu who, in the face of withering fire, worked to douse burning planes until he gave his last full measure of devotion. One of the only civilian firefighters ever to receive the Purple Heart. We salute Americans like Chief Petty Officer John Finn, who manned a .50 caliber machine gun for more than 2 hours and was wounded more than 20 times, earning him our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor. And it is here that we reflect on how war tests our most enduring values. How, even as Japanese Americans were deprived of their own liberty during the war, one of the most decorated military units in the history of the United States was the 442nd Infantry Regiment and its 100th Infantry Battalion, the Japanese-American Nisei. In that 442nd served my friend and proud Hawaiian Daniel Inouye. a man who was a senator from Hawaii for most of my life, and with whom I would find myself proud to serve in the Senate chamber. A man who was not only the recipient of the Medal of Honor and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but was one of the most distinguished statesmen of his generation as well. Here at Pearl Harbor, America's first battle of the Second World War roused the nation. Here, in so many ways, America came of age. A generation of Americans, including my grandparents, that greatest generation, they did not seek war, but they refused to shrink from it. And they all did their part on fronts and in factories. And while 75 years later, the proud ranks of Pearl Harbor survivors have thinned with time, the bravery we recall here is forever etched in our national heart. I would ask all our Pearl Harbor and World War II veterans who are able to please stand or raise your hands, because a grateful nation thanks you. The character of nations is tested in war, but it is defined in peace. After one of the most horrific chapters in human history, one that took not tens of thousands, but tens of millions of lives, with ferocious fighting across this ocean, the United States and Japan chose friendship, and they chose peace. Over the decades, our alliance has made both of our nations more successful. It has helped underwrite an international order that has prevented another world war and that has lifted more than 1 billion people out of extreme poverty. Today, the alliance between the United States and Japan, bound not only by shared interests but also rooted in common values, stands as the cornerstone of peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific and a force for progress around the globe. Our alliance has never been stronger. In good times and in bad, we are there for each other. Recall 5 years ago, when a wall of water bore down on Japan and reactors in Fukushima melted. America's men and women in uniform were there to help our Japanese friends. Across the globe, the United States and Japan worked shoulder to shoulder to strengthen the security of the Asia-Pacific and the world, turning back piracy, combating disease, slowing the spread of nuclear weapons, keeping the peace in war-torn lands. Earlier this year, near Pearl Harbor, Japan joined with 24 nations in the world's largest maritime military exercise. And that included our forces from U.S. Pacific Command, led by Admiral Harry Harris, the son of an American naval officer and a Japanese mother. Harry was born in Yokosuka, but you wouldn't know it from his Tennessee twang. Thank you, Harry, for your outstanding leadership. In this sense, our presence here today, the connection is not just between our governments, but between our people. The presence of Prime Minister Abe here today remind us of what is possible between nations and between peoples. Wars can end. The most bitter of adversaries can become the strongest of allies. The fruits of peace always outweigh the plunder of war. This is the enduring truth of this hallowed harbor. It is here that we remember that even when hatred burns hottest, even when the tug of tribalism is at its most primal, we must resist the urge to turn inward. We must resist the urge to demonize those who are different. The sacrifice made here, the anguish of war, reminds us to seek that divine spark that is common to all humanity. It insists that we strive to be what our Japanese friends called otagai no tameni, with and for each other. That's the lesson of Captain William Callahan of the Missouri. Even after an attack on his ship, he ordered that the Japanese pilot be laid to rest with military honors, wrapped in a Japanese flag sewn by American sailors. It's the lesson in turn of the Japanese pilot who, years later, returned to this harbor, befriended an old Marine bugler, and asked him to play taps and lay 2 roses at this memorial every month, one for America's fallen and one for Japan's. It's a lesson our two peoples learn every day in the most ordinary of ways, whether it's Americans studying in Tokyo, young Japanese studying across America, scientists from our two nations together unraveling the mysteries of cancer or combating climate change, exploring the stars. It's a baseball player like Ichiro lighting up a stadium in Miami, buoyed by the shared pride of two peoples, both American and Japanese, united in peace and friendship. As nations and as people, we cannot choose the history that we inherit, but we can choose what lessons to draw from it and use those lessons to chart our own futures. Prime Minister Abe, I welcome you here in the spirit of friendship, as the people of Japan have always welcomed me. I hope that together we send a message to the world that there is more to be won in peace than in war, that reconciliation carries more rewards than retribution. Here in this quiet harbor, we honor those we lost, and we give thanks for all that our two nations have won together as friends. May God hold the fallen in his everlasting arms. May he watch over our veterans and all who stand guard on our behalf. May God bless us all. Thank you.
And that concludes the remarks of President Obama and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe as they speak together at the USS Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Very interesting comments indeed from both. I was actually quite relieved that the president didn't take any questions from the press, because I feel he would have taken that moment to attack both Donald Trump and Fox News.
Right. Because it's been 90 seconds and he hasn't.
Exactly right, Brian.
Yeah,
well, it's a very solemn moment commemorating, as Brian Kilmeade pointed out, 75 years later, we're still friends, which is all very nice to hear. Breaking news. Actually, I think it's lovely, because if you remember, President Obama went to Hiroshima a little
7 months ago.
A little while back, and people were kind of up in arms arms about it, and I think it's nice that the Japanese returned the favor and came to a place where, let's not forget, they did attack us. They did start our involvement in World War II, and so it's nice to acknowledge, even all these decades later, that obviously, despite our deep and long decades of friendship, that they're based on a horrific period in our nation's history where a lot of people died on both sides.
And then one of the things that binds us is awareness of China's emergence in that area where we're responsible for the defense. I also think it's interesting that we thought this was the first prime minister to visit. Hawaii is actually the third. They did low-key visits before, and it was his grandfather that was the first leader to visit from Japan.
They also visited the grave of former U.S. Senator Daniel Inouye, whose parents were Japanese.
It's also interesting if you look back at this point in time in history, you know, the U.S. and Russia were allies at that point in time. Now you look at where that relationship stands and the suspicion among the two groups, yet at the same time, the relationship between the U.S. and and Japan and Germany now as allies. Interesting turn.
I'm glad we're doing it. I think it's awesome. I lost an uncle over Vanuatu, New Hebrides Islands in World War II. I think this is a great step, but I do think also it is a heads up. Brian's right, a heads up to China, who just, I think yesterday or today, moved a carrier into the South China Sea, which is a bit of a provocative move.
Yeah, they made an island and put missiles on it. They also want pieces of the
theirs.
and they also want pieces of the Indian Ocean. But it's time for us to talk and pull back. I think things are changing.
Yeah, China trolling a little bit too, really sort of exacerbating the situation, trying to create tension between Japan and the United States, hoping to break up some of that goodwill on display here tonight. We've got much more of the 5 coming up in just moments.
Now back to your regularly scheduled format. Israel is our greatest ally, so it's confounding to some why the Obama administration would decided on Friday to abstain from a UN Security Council vote to condemn Israel for its settlements on the West Bank and especially in East Jerusalem. Now, Israel thinks the White House actually orchestrated the vote and says it has evidence. For example,
well, we have rather ironclad information from sources in both the Arab world and internationally that this was a deliberate push by the United States, and in fact they helped create the resolution in the first place.
And what is outrageous is that the United States was actually behind that gang up. I think it was a very sad day and really a shameful chapter.
And that was just the beginning of the outrage. It has not stopped. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is, of course, very upset.
As I told John Kerry on Thursday, friends don't take friends to the Security Council.
Well, undeterred by the defeat of the United Nations, Israel says it will move ahead with thousands of new homes in East Jerusalem, finishing up with 600 en route to 5,000, and warned the nations against further action directly and indirectly. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump tore into the UN following the resolution, the only way he knows how when he's on vacation, through the Twitter machine. The United Nations has such great potential, but right now it is just a club for people to get together and talk and have a good time. Sad. Charles Krauthammer calls the world body a disaster and suggests Mr. Trump, the president-elect, try to find a way to get rid of it.
We're paying an organization that spends half its time, more than half its time, and energy and resources and bureaucracy trying to attack the only Jewish state on the planet, a tiny little speck, while genocide, mayhem, murder, terrorism is going on all over the world. It is an organization that exacerbates tensions. It does not assuage them. I think that's good real estate in downtown New York City, and Trump ought to find a way to put his name on it and turn it into condos.
Wow, what a very direct comments from Charles Krauthammer. He comes from a man who understands what the potential is real estate-wise. There's been 20 condemning resolutions against Israel. One against Syria, who has killed at least 400,000 people, and 1 million said I better leave, and one against Russia, who is carving up the Ukraine. Right before that, they carved up they carved up Georgia. What about this organization? How can they exist this tilted against one small nation?
It's one of those institutions, like so many that we see anywhere in politics, that started out with great intentions and good ideas, and like you said, a place where people can come together. You need a place to go and talk. But then after a while, the special interests take over. It just gets mired in corruption. There are all these negative externalities to what they're doing. I'm not sure it makes sense to keep going. And you have to, I mean, this is part of what the Trump phenomenon is about, is rather than just blindly accepting something that's there because, oh, we have to have it because this is where you go talk. You have to be able to really look and reevaluate your commitment to these institutions, and you have to have the walk away ready. I mean, you talk about we can't just leave, we can't just not be a part of this. If the other side doesn't believe that you're willing to stand up and walk away, you're not actually negotiating. So, you know, we have have to act like does this really make sense? Is there a better way to do it?
Absolutely. Now let's look at this resolution in particular. What does U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer have in common with Senator Gillibrand, have in common with Congressman Elliot Engel, have in common with Congresswoman Nita Lowry? They're all Democrats and all condemned.
They're all from New York.
And they all condemned, and I could have listed 20 more others. They took the top 4, all condemned this resolution from their party's president. What does President Obama gain from this isolated action?
Well, first of all, I think President Obama did this after years of, and I'm not defending it, but after years of frustration with Bibi Netanyahu, and also after years of frustration.
They just don't like each other.
After increased settlements in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, which is, by the way, something that Republican and Democratic administrations alike condemned, including Ronald Reagan.
But as you know, for decades, we have stood by them and would never abstain from a UN
well, we
resolution.
actually have. But I will also say this. The problem with the UN, and I think, Melissa, you pointed this out so well, and Brian, you did in your intro, is the United Nations has to come to grips with the fact that they turn a complete blind eye to the savagery, and I mean savagery, among some of the people that voted for this resolution. Venezuela, Russia, China are some of the biggest human rights abusers in the world. And for them to stand in judgment on the only democracy in the Middle East is abhorrent. And to be lectured by the likes of Venezuela and Vladimir Putin and the Chinese is insane. So I would say to the UN, get your own, especially to the members of the Security Council, get your own house in order. I understand.
Well, fine, but actually address the president. What is President Obama doing here?
This is an opinion show. This is my opinion. I think President Obama is no friend to Israel. I also think President Obama, on his way out, is settling a score, which you point out, that he has with Bibi Netanyahu. I mean, if you remember the whole thing when Netanyahu came and he spoke to Congress, President Obama didn't show up. We remember that whole issue, and they've had the contentious relationship. But the most important thing that the president should do is whatever he does, whatever he acts upon, should be in the best interest of peace. My problem with this is abstaining isn't in the best interest of peace. It emboldens the anti-Israel crowd, emboldens the pro-Palestinian crowd, and it creates more tension in the region. One more thing, and the other part of this is the numbers, the UN, we spend $8 billion. There's $3 billion that we put towards the budget. We spend $8 billion on UN initiatives. $8 billion. Cut it in half.
At least take away that parking. Go ahead, Kennedy. What do you think about this? I don't see any upside. I think the blowback has even surprised the president.
No, it's sad that this is a legacy that these two men leave behind. And abstaining is the same as voting yes. They are permanent members of the Security Council, and the United States absolutely could have voted this resolution down. So what does it mean? What is the UN going to do going forward? And somehow I just get really sickened by the moral relativism we see in the Middle East. That bad is really bad, but only for a few people, and they put Israel at the top of the list. But you look at the actors, at the groups and the states surrounding Israel who really just want to wipe the place off the map. You look at Hamas alone, that is not a charitable organization. I don't care what Nancy Pelosi says.
Well, can I just throw in here very quickly? Venezuela brought the negotiating part. Venezuela brought the resolution?
No.
Along with Venezuela, Senegal, and New Zealand.
Right. In Venezuela, do you think this is what they're really thinking about in Venezuela right now? Let's figure out what's going on in the Middle East, and let's push back on Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Eric, it was a push by Egypt. They backed off when Donald Trump asked them to, and then they came back with this on Friday. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Lots of people go shopping the day after Christmas. The only thing that should be stressful are the long lines for returns. But yesterday, the scenes at more than a dozen malls across America were chaotic as violence erupted. Take a look at this brawl in Texas. And this one in Connecticut. Thanks, Obama. I don't
can't even blame him for this.
Eric, how are you going to find a way to blame him?
No, I'm not. Just trying to figure out what's going on. Some of these are coordinated brawls that's going on online.
Why do you
How
think
about this? Well, they said there's some online social media activity where people say, meet at the mall, there's going to be a big fight.
Particularly in rural Colorado.
Fox Valley, Illinois, 1,000 teens fought. And I mean, is it just a function of when you're in a mall now? Obviously, malls are crowded. And you're in a mall now, and you hear something, shots fired. The natural reaction is this is terror, and everyone starts to go.
That happened at Roosevelt Field on Long Island.
Yeah,
and also
Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Jersey
But
Pride,
they're
Jersey
not
Gardens,
just
exactly.
running. It's not just people running for their lives and self-preservation. This strikes me as bored protesters in places where it's too cold to go outside, so they rally their fellow bored friends and they go to the mall and start screwing around.
I would posit to you that you have never been to the Jersey Gardens Mall, Elizabeth, New Jersey. That is not bored protesters. There's just a bunch of bored people who are looking for good deals and fighting over something at Burlington Coat Factory.
See, I don't think it actually has anything to do with the products. I think it is totally a social media phenomenon. This is where people are gathering, you know, whatever, they're talking to each other, show up, let's start a brawl. Entertainment inside. I mean, it's all reason to never go to the mall again. I only shop online. This video just reinforces that to me. Also, you know, the movie Mall Cop wasn't about the fact that there's no policing to be done at malls.
No, I think it was. I think there was a message. Kevin James, you should get an army out there with your little helmets on.
On Segways.
On Segways.
But, Brian, I mean, I don't know. Do you think it's the social media? Because I remember when I was growing up, people were pulling each other's hair over Cabbage Patch Kids over Christmas, and people were looking for deals. I was in the tough Bronx, my friend. Well, it was not easy to find a Cabbage Patch doll back then.
Yeah, no, I never found one.
And can you imagine doing time for pulling somebody's hair who
over
had, because he had a Cabbage Patch doll?
Let me tell you, I came this close to living that dream, so yeah, I can't imagine.
And by the way, they have some longevity. When's the last time you saw one? More on Cabbage Patch dolls, maybe the whole next hour, special edition of the 5
I'll be
on the
back
weekend.
tomorrow.
But I do think it's got to be coordinated. I mean, who's this angry in this many different locations at the same time, around the same age? That's called it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the kids are doing.
Clearly anti-Trump people.
Absolutely.
It's time on target, but now people are looking for it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
You know, this is the newest flash mob.
I am so proud of you. It only took you 90 seconds to come up with a way to blame this on the Democrats.
No, you tried to get me to blame Obama. And I didn't.
Got it.
I was blaming the
blame Chuck Schumer.
crowd. They're not necessarily Democrats, the anti-Trump crowd. We know that, right?
Okay. All right. You know what? This was no rush. One more thing is up next.
All right, time for one more thing. I'm going to kick it off. First of all, tonight, make sure you stick around. The O'Reilly Factor tonight, we'll be hosting that. We have John Bolton on. We're going to talk to him about Israel. Also, Dr. Keith Abloh, find out why these kids are beating each other up in malls.
Obama.
Okay, we won't blame Obama. Okay, so Wall Street Journal today has a great article. I know I won't get like this kind of stuff. Talking about the penny. For years, I think it's time to get rid of the penny.
Here.
Check this out, though. Did you know a penny costs 1.4 cents to produce, and we produce 9 billion pennies? Isn't it time to get rid of this? But also, the nickel costs more than it's worth. Now, remember, this is the full faith and credit of the United States behind these notes, behind these coins. That's why they're worth anything. But when it gets to the point where it's almost 50% more than it's worth, time to get rid of it. Also, check it out. A bill only costs 5.5 cents. To produce. So.
Yeah, but they also harbor many more germs.
It's all, you know what it is? It's time to get rid of real money.
Paper pennies?
Let's just use electronic money.
Bitcoin?
It's time.
Good point.
Not Bitcoin, but maybe other forms of coin.
Oh,
you know?
Apple Pay.
Love that.
Maybe we should go back to just exchanging items instead of having money.
Bartering.
Or just,
a great age.
Just use your phone.
Services.
Use your smartphone.
Okay.
Use your smart brain now.
All right, here we go. Some breaking news in the world of sports that probably would interest you. One of the most flamboyant coaches in the NFL, Rex Ryan, fired after a year in which, he was one game under 500 in his 2 seasons with the Bills. They have very average talent. They got rid of him right away. I'm really surprised by this because he gave that team in desperate need of an identity. But something else is brewing. In Jacksonville, where we have a lot of dedicated viewers, it looks like Tom Coughlin is going to interview for a job when he was the first Jacksonville coach ever. But the word is at the age of 71 years old, he is a front runner to get this job. And I'm amazed at the outrage in the sports community that a 71-year-old can be the head of a football team. Wait a second. The president of the United States is 70 years old, and no one says he's too old. Bernie Sanders is 100 years old.
Yeah, Bernie's
no
going
one
to be
said he was too
80
old.
years old when he takes the oath of office in 4 years.
Yeah, but is there something about football that's more taxing than running the country? I think 70 is the new 20.
More football coaches have heart attacks than
presidents. Coughlin's got a couple of Super Bowls to his credit. Let me ask you something about Rex Ryan. You think a 15-17 record, they should have kept him?
I would have kept him another year, and here's why. That's an average talent in that team. They need to get people up there.
He's a participation trophy.
Well, listen.
Version?
Buffalo has not had much success. He steadied the ship. I believe that he should get another shot. For Tom Coughlin, the people of Jacksonville love him. He has a house there. You should go out and hire him.
Okay, very good. Will he get hired again, though, Rex Ryan? I mean,
Rex Ryan? No.
He's had a tough guy.
As a broadcaster, he'll almost be as famous as you.
There you go. Okay, Kennedy, you're up.
It's very difficult this time of year for people who've lost loved ones. And we lost our dad a year ago at this time. And so to honor him, my dad gave us all the gift of running. And the most beautiful place he used to take me to run as a kid is Tryon Creek State Park in Portland. And so I went on a long, beautiful trail run. Look at those giant old trees, moss covered. The sun was gleaming through, balancing on one of the fallen logs, running up a hill, and it's a metaphor for grief. You find your way through, and in the end, you have realized how much love changes your life and the depth of it.
Can I also point out that running in the state parks is phenomenal? The state park system is absolutely amazing in the United States. We're fortunate to have that. Great way to take advantage of that. Okay, who's up next? Melissa's up.
I'm going to try and follow that, which won't be easy, with my family vacation to Florida. It's Christmas, so these are just gratuitous pictures of my children. There they are playing huge chess. My little guy got one up on the big guy. This is baby Gemma.
Look at her.
She's looking out at the sun into the ocean. That's the Sand Pearl Hotel. You could see Thompson there. Santa stopped in for a little break before he went out and delivered all the gifts. Thompson went out. There's my daughter Gemma. So she got this huge kitchen for my mother-in-law. We live in New York City. I don't know how it's going to fit in our apartment, but never mind. She looks lovely in front of it. There she is, cracking up at her cousin
Maybe keep
Talbot.
it at Grandma's house.
Look at. I think that's a great idea. Let's leave it at Grandma's house. There she's laughing hysterically at her cousin and all of us on the beach. Look at that Christmas day. Have you seen such a beautiful Christmas
You must not have been home.
Oh, we loved it. We love you, Florida. Market the Sand Pearl. We love you too. Very fun. What a great holiday.
So, in the spirit of World War II, we were just discussing that with Shinzo Abe and the president. Taylor Swift played Santa Claus for a 96-year-old World War II veteran. This guy named Cyrus Porter is apparently a huge Taylor Swift fan. He thinks this is a way to connect with his grandchildren. He's been to a couple of her concerts, which is 2 more than I've ever been to. And he said, I just enjoyed going to see them and her. I would as soon as go see her right now as anybody. I love this guy. So Taylor Swift showed up at this guy's house and surprised him. Watch this.
Amazing.
He moves pretty well.
Amazing.
Wow, that's him dancing right there.
That's actually him playing guitar.
How great is that? I love this guy, and Taylor Swift, you're awesome for doing that.
All right, set your DVRs so you never miss an episode of The Five. That's it for our special report is next. Also, happy Hanukkah to everyone, all our Jewish friends. Day 4, night 4. Special report next.